Hi there, Ford owners. Today in your 2015 Ford F-350 Super Duty, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Mighty Cord's in-bed wiring harness. By adding a second 7-way connector to the rear bed of your vehicle instead of just on the hitch, you can easily hook up gooseneck and fifth wheel trailers, because oftentimes those bigger trailers won't reach the back to be able to plug into your rear connection. By placing it in the bed here, you can easily make that connection here without having to extend the wiring and worry about wires hanging out the back of your truck. And it's just a quick and easy way to be able to get wiring installed here in our truck. It is a multi-piece setup, so the connector here is separate from the harness, but they both come in the kit. That does have its pros and its cons. The pros to it is, depending on how you use your truck, like if you're just going to use this for a fifth wheel, this may not be necessarily the best option because you're probably never going to damage your connector end here. But if you use your truck multi-purpose, you're still going to take your fifth wheel out, maybe use it to throw wood and other things back here in your truck, it's possible this connector could get damaged. So the fact that it is an easily replaceable connector that just plugs into the harness, that can be a great option for you if you think you're going to damage the connector. Now, if you don't think you're going to damage the connector and be using it roughly and just be kind of mainly using it for fifth wheel pulling, I'd probably recommend one from Bargman. They have a much more low profile one that just fits a little bit better in the cavities. You'll have more options and locations where you'll be able to put it if you wanted to closer up to the front or something like that. Because this connector, since it has a separate plug in the back to allow this to be replaceable, it does have a bigger footprint, so it sticks further into the paneling here behind our connector than like the Bargman one would. But the Bargman is made onto the connector, so if you damage that connector end, you'd have to get creative or purchase a whole new harness in order to replace that one. So those are just kind of the two things to look at when looking at these kits. Do you have the space? If you got a dually truck, this kit should probably work out just fine. But if you have a single wheel, rear wheel truck, it gets a little tight in there, and I'd probably recommend the Bargman for you guys out there. The Bargman does also come with a spacer plate, so if you do run into clearance issues even with the lower profile 90-degree end, you can put that plate on there to space it out further. We don't get any accommodations like that in this kit, but we do get all the hardware we need to mount it up, as well as some extra cable ties in the kit to secure everything. I would recommend adding a little bit of dielectric grease to your cart on checkout, because you'll want to put that between your connectors to protect it. Now that we've covered some of the features of our wiring here though, let's take a minute and we'll show you how to get it installed. We'll begin our installation here at the back of the vehicle. We're going to install ours on the driver's side, but you can choose wherever you want to put it. You do want to make sure that you've got enough clearance between wherever you're going to mount it here and the outside of your truck. Because if you don't have the clearance, it's obviously not going to fit. This one here by Mighty Cord, honestly I'd recommend the one from Bargman. Bargman has a low profile one, so it doesn't have a connector here at the back. It's pre-made wires that do a nice 90 degrees, so it's a lot shorter than this one. And the Bargman one also comes with an adapter plate, so you can space it out if you do need that additional clearance. But the Mighty Cord here is basically the same thing, it's just not quite as a discrete package. We're going to put ours right in this location, that way it sticks out. We should hopefully have enough space in this area to be able to make it fit here. It does recommend using a 2-inch hole saw for the hole to cut this out, although I would recommend going up to the next size, like a 2 1/8 inch, just because since this has the connector end on the back, the connector end's actually a little bit bigger and it's kind of got that offset spot for it to click in, and you'll have a real hard time getting that to fit in 2-inch. It is possible, but you just risk damaging the connector because it's such a tight fit. If you just go up to that next size, it'll fit a whole lot easier, and you won't even be able to tell because there's plenty of room here on the outside on each side of the area here, so it should work out fine. So we're going to go ahead and cut our hole here. I'm going to center it in between the two edges here. You might want to consider running it backwards real quick just to cut through any spray-in bed liner that you've got, and then you can switch it back because the bed liner just really grabs and it's hard to hold it when you're cutting. All right, now we're just going to cut on through. Now as you're cutting on through, you got to put some pressure on it, but we don't want to put a lot of pressure on it because there's really not a huge distance between this interior panel and the exterior one where your vehicle's painted and looks nice. We don't want to bulge that out. So just keep some pressure on it, but make sure you stay in control so you can stop it right away. All right, and once you get cut through there, make sure you pull back. And we're just checking, you can peel off any of that. It may be sharp there on the edges, so just be careful when you're doing this. You might take a file and clean that up a little bit just to knock off any rough edges. We're gonna grab a vacuum and clean this up, and we're also gonna seal up the exposed metal with a little bit of spray paint. So now we're gonna go ahead and take our wiring and feed it into place. You've got two ends, you've got your single end and your dual end. This end is gonna be backed by your factory connector. This is the end that's gonna plug into the one that we're installing right here. So you can reach just right underneath this paneling here. So you're gonna see I'm gonna poke this out through the hole. I'm just gonna reach right underneath and pop it through there. But I recommend before plugging it in, putting dielectric grease in between your connector ends. That'll seal it up, protect it against moisture and corrosion. You can get this here at e-trailer if you need some. We want to be pretty generous with it. Line up the connector ends there and plug it together. This should now go back, push into our hole. So now we're going to take the self-tapping screws that come in our kit and a 1/4-inch socket and run them in place. So we can go ahead and set that there. Checking our outer wall here to make sure we're not putting any pressure on it or bulging. And everything looks okay there. We should be just barely, I think, fitting in there. So now we're just gonna run it in, kind of roughly holding it to where I want it. And then I'll get a screw started. Double check ourselves, making sure that looks pretty level. Mm-hmm. And then we'll run another screw in place. And just check yourself one more time. If everything looks pretty good and level, you can go your next one. Because you do still got a little tiny bit of adjustment that you can do here with just the two. So we'll just tweak it just a hair. That looks pretty level, so then we're just going to go in now and just run the next two fasteners in place. All right, that looks pretty good there. All right, so now we need to unplug the connector at the back of our 7 and 4 here, our factory connector for our trailer. To unplug it though, it's kind of hard because the hitch is like right there. So we're gonna pull this bracket off here. There's two fasteners on bottom. We're gonna use a 10mm socket to zip those out of there. That'll free up our bracket some and just make it easier for us to work with it. So now we can press in on the release tab there and separate the two. We can knock out any dirt and stuff that's inside of there. This connector here is going to now go on each side of our harness. One of our pieces from our harness is going to plug into the factory connector and the other one's going to plug into there. Now we do want to kind of route it in a way that makes sense, although it looks like it's all open right here. So this is just kind of all open. So we'll end up just kind of pushing it back in there. Just like that, and then we'll use a cable tie. You do get some in your kit to just kind of secure it all up here in the corner, kind of keeping it out of the way of our spare tire. Now, just like we did on top, before we plug in our new harness here, we're going to fill this up with dielectric grease. The larger end is going to plug into the vehicle side. And make sure it is all the way plugged in. It's not uncommon for it to just not quite be all the way, and you can just pull it right apart. Since I can't pull it apart, I know it's clicked in, so we're good to go there. And now this end, we're going to fill this with grease, plug it in, and then we can reinstall that bracket underneath. And again, check these two, make sure it is fully clicked in. Can't pull it out of there. That all looks good. Now we'll just grab our fasteners that we had removed and reinstall our panel here. All right, that's nice and secure. So the only thing that we really have left that we need to accomplish here is taking all the excess that's hanging down and secure it up there with cable ties. So now we just need to test it out. I've gone ahead and plugged in my test box here. You could also use your trailer, but I recommend a tester because if you have any faults on your trailer, you can get some inconclusive results and think there's an issue with your wiring when it's actually your trailer. So this just helps you verify the vehicle side's working properly. Right away, you can see here at the top, we've got our voltage, so our auxiliary power outlet for charging the battery and stuff and operating the battery in our trailer. That's working there, and our clearance lights are working. I'm gonna go ahead and switch the switch over. That changes this reading from the auxiliary power over to trailer brakes, and we'll be hitting our brake controller here in just a second. First, I'm gonna run through the turn signals though, so you can see that both of those are also operating. We got our left and our right there. Go ahead and turn those off and hit the brakes, and you can see they light up there as well. Go ahead and turn off our tail lights. And then I'm going to grab the manual slide for our brake controller. And I can hear the output on our tester, and you should also see it at the gauge in the top right. And that completes our installation of Mighty Cord's in-bed wiring harness on our 2015 Ford F-350 Super Duty.